Bună ziua și bine v-am găsit la o nouă ediție a emisiunii ZF AgroPower. Sunt Florentina Nițu și astăzi voi fi gazda dumneavoastră. Săptămâna aceasta vorbim despre prune, despre cum a fost producția din acest an atât pentru prunele normale cât și pentru cele ecologice. Vorbim despre cum le putem crește valoarea, cum influențează schimbările climatice, care e viitorul acestui sector. Și am alături de mine pe Irina Mărășoiu de la Pater și pe domnul Emil Florescu, un producător ecologic. Bună ziua!
Bună ziua!
Irina, aș începe cu tine să ne povestești dacă ați găsit prune pentru țuică anul ăsta. E un an bun?
Prunele au căzut efectiv din pomi. A fost un an foarte bun pentru prunele din zona noastră. Nu știu în restul țării extrem de bine. Dar pregătindu-mă pentru această discuție i-am pus tatei câteva întrebări. El este inginer horticol, el știe cel mai bine și el se ocupă de toate livezile noastre. Și da, mi-a spus că a fost unul dintre cei mai buni ani din ultima perioadă, cu toate că condițiile meteorologice nu au fost o mai bune pentru celelalte culturi, pentru celelalte fructe, să zic așa.
Și bunica mea, acum că spui, îmi povestea că și în Timiș s-au făcut multe prune, că a fost un an prosper și poate și la domnul Florescu. Cum ați simțit producția? Pentru cele ecologice a fost la fel de bine?
Pot să vă spun că, într-adevăr, au fost prune multe, dar lipsa de apă s-a văzut. Deci au rămas micuțe și mai puțin, adică cu seamă mai puțină. În general, eu știu, mai ales cele care se coc acum toamna, au fost ceva probleme, adică nu prea s-au dezvoltat normal.
Dar la dumneavoastră a fost și în funcție de sol sau zonă sau de soiuri?
A fost, da, sigur, prunele de vară, prunele văratice, au avut o dezvoltare normală, chiar foarte bună. Nu același lucru s-a întâmplat cu prunele care se coc toamna, atât cele de masă cât și cele pentru distilare. S-a simțit destul de bine lipsa apei, nu au căpătat, eu știu, volumul care trebuia să-l aibă în mod normal, nu au crescut cât trebuia să crească și, de asemenea, nici dulceața n-au avut-o chiar cea pe care o știam noi, ba unele soiuri au rămas chiar un pic acrișoare. Deci lipsa de apă s-a simțit destul de bine la prunele care eu știu, au avut perioada de coacere spre toamnă și care nu au avut apă suficientă în sol. Deci la noi a fost, în zona de deal, a fost secetă destul de severă. Deci chiar toate domeniile și cei care cresc animale, de fapt, pomicultura la noi este strâns legată de creșterea animalelor. Știți, între rândurile pomii se pățește iarba se folosește pentru hrana animalelor, bălegarul de la animale se utilizează la pomi. Deci, oarecum, cei care au livezi de pomi, implicit cresc și animale sau sunt într-o relație destul de apropiată cu crescători de animale. Și la animale, deci s-a simțit foarte puternic lipsa de apă și la pomi și, în general, zona de deal anul acesta a fost un an mai dificil.
Dumneavoastră, din ce am văzut, produceți în mai multe locuri. Sunt diferențe de producție?
Sunt diferențe și în funcție de amplasarea terenului, de sol, de compoziția solului. Sunt diferențe și plecând de la soiurile de pomi. Eu am livezi, pe care le-am moștenit, cu soiuri din acestea autohtone, cu soiuri primitive, ca să zic așa, dar sunt rezistente la bolile și dăunători, chiar și la secetă. Și de asemenea am și livezi cu pomii din aceștia care produc prune pentru masă și, în general, am și alte fructe și mere și pere, dar în cantități mai mici, pentru masă. Și, mă rog, pot să vă spun că sunt mai puțin rezistenți și la secetă, și la boli, și la dăunători, față de pomii aceia tradițional, pomii pe care, eu știu, au reușit să-i asimileze părinții, bunicii noștri sau cei care au fost înainte. Deci, ne bucurăm că au fructele mai mari, dar consistența lor, mă refer, este diferită. Deci, se vede clar atunci când mănânc o prună, să zic, zicem noi, cloțușe sau o prună neagră sau o bunătătănea aceea românească față de o prună de care o găsim acum pe masă, pe mesele din piețe și care sunt mari, dar care nu au aceeași gust ca cele locale, ca cele, ca să zic așa, primitive.
Am înțeles. Irina, la voi cum sunt livezile și cum au evoluat la nivel calitativ în funcție de soiuri, de
Bună ziua și bine ați venit la o nouă ediție ZF Tech Day. Eu sunt Adrian Seceleanu, iar invitatul ediției de astăzi este Kevin Beck, storyteller din partea companiei Lenovo, unul dintre cei mai mari jucători de pe piața de PC-uri și discuția va fi, bineînțeles, în limba engleză. Hello Kevin and thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, thank you for having me.
Well, it's a great joy that we get to talk again with you. I know one of my colleagues discussed with you the market, I think 5 years ago. So maybe I'll start with this. How do you see the computer market these days? Which are the main trends that catch your eye?
Sure. The 5 years since I was here last and spoke with your colleague, I think we've seen an increase in different form factors. We now have things like foldable PCs. We've done concepts for rollable PCs. We've done concepts for transparent screen PCs. We just showed a concept at IFA for a tablet PC with motors that can change itself. So a lot of changes in the form factor, some available today, some we're looking at for the future. But as we discussed earlier, things like desktops and mobile workstations, I think their role has changed. There's more laptops than ever, but there's still definitely a need, a need for desktop PCs, but especially in the era of all the different aspects of AI, of content creation as well as consumption. The computing power that's available in high-end desktop workstations and also in high-end mobile workstations, like some of our ThinkPad P series. The old saying is that no matter how fast a PC or how powerful a PC is, we'll always find some way to fill it up. We'll find way to fill it up with data or use all of its power. And I think that's absolutely true.
So one thing that we can see is that computers didn't go away. They were not replaced by smartphones or tablets.
Nope.
As at some point there were some voices saying that, but once we had the pandemic and then everyone needed a laptop, any kind of laptop, any kind of computer. So at this point, if you look at the market, which are the main kind of products that customers are asking for? Is the market settled on laptops or desktops, or how would you see this?
In the business PC market, it's absolutely true that the majority, I don't know the percentage, but the majority of users use laptops, especially given work from home trends and sort of work from anywhere, hybrid trends. And I don't see that changing, but the percentage, while the percentage of desktops has perhaps gone down a little bit over the last few years, I don't think it will ever go away, because there's always going to be a need for systems that are more powerful, more upgradable, can have multiple video cards. But yeah, the overwhelming majority of the market is on some combination of the traditional laptop or some of the other form factors that we have, like the 2-in-1 where the screens flip around, or even some on a different type of, older type of tablet hinge where the system will spin all the way around. But I think one of the differences is it's not a huge amount, but we have a great degree of interest from, we have a lot of interest from some segments of the market, high-end consumer creators and some travelers in things like a Lenovo ThinkBook laptop that we have that has a traditional screen on the inside with full standard power consumption, and you spin it around 360 degrees and fold it down, and the outside is a color e-ink screen that gives you much more battery life, and you can use it as just a reader for PDFs or for ebooks. So standard PC form factors, notebook form factors are not going away. But we do see more of a market for sort of experimental hybrid type form factors. It's a pretty interesting time.
Which are the latest products that you showcased at IFA recently? So maybe you could highlight which are the most interesting ones.
Okay. So we had a broad scope of product announcements with our notebooks. I think it were mostly all notebooks that we really announced. A couple of new ThinkPads, some new yogas, which are our high-end consumer systems, and then a number of just general consumer notebooks. But what I found interesting is that this year, for the first time ever, we have the broadest, or for us, and for anyone, I think, we have the broadest assortment of those across different processor manufacturers. At this same show, we announced products with processors from Intel, from AMD, and from Qualcomm. And in fact, one of the products that we announced, which is the ThinkPad T14S Generation 6 or Gen 6, it's the first time we've ever had the same laptop, the same ThinkPad, available in the market at the same time with processors from 3 different suppliers. And that's something that our customers have asked for. As they evaluate the differences between them, they want to be able to run tests and do development and do benchmarks on the same platform with 3 different options. And maybe their whole company doesn't go one way or the other, but they find a use for different approaches to the architecture from 3 different processor manufacturers. My opinion, and I think Lenovo's opinion, is that choice is good.
Yeah.
The single biggest thing we announced that's a real shipping product, and I'll talk more about the concept that we announced in a minute, but we announced a sort of program or project that we've been working on with Intel for the past over 2 years on our ThinkPad X1 Gen 13 and on our Yoga Slim 7, which is something we call ThinkPad Aura Edition, ThinkPad Aura Edition and Yoga Aura Edition. And to try to put it as simply as possible, as a manufacturer of PCs working with Intel, we've come up with a lot of very interesting functions and features over the past few years that are all specifically meant to help people do something in one way or another. Some is security, some is attention or keeping you from being distracted. Some of it is wellness and health related. Some of it is video collaboration and video conference related. And what we found, what we and Intel found through a couple of years of very extensive user research studies, is that people think about these things in very different ways and not necessarily the way an engineer thinks about them. And 2, should be obvious, people don't use what they can't find.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier, we've
Yes.
we've had a function available in most ThinkPads for the last few years that uses the camera to monitor over your shoulders and tell you if someone is looking over your shoulder at your computer screen and pop up a warning. And then also, if you want it to, it can blur the screen for privacy. And when I ask customers how many people realized that we had that, maybe 20, 30%. So we took a long look at about 18 to 20 different things that we were doing. Those 2 security things, some things like the ability to blur the background automatically in your video or keep the camera centered on your face, enhance the video picture in low light situations. That's all the video collaboration. To ask you or prompt you to look up away from your screen every 20 minutes and stare at something in the distance for 20 seconds to rest your eyes. That's a function that we've had for a couple of years. And it tracks your eyeballs, just like the function over your shoulder. And if you turn it on, it shows a 20-second timer across the screen as a green bar. And if you look down at the screen, it stops because it's not going to let you cheat. It also can sort of act as a little bit of your mother. Looking at the size of your face in the screen, as you get closer, your face gets bigger. And if your face constantly gets bigger and bigger and stays there, then it knows that you are hunching your PC, and it will tell you to sit up straight.
Yeah.
Some other examples, or there are other examples of things that we've done. Some of them AI related, some of them not. And it's a 2-year project to determine how people would use these, how they would group them together logically, and how we could make them as easy to use as possible. So one time you go in and you set all these things, and you can now tap one button and you get a pop-up that says, do you want your Shield security features on? Do you want your wellness enhancements on, your collaboration, or your attention, and just turn them off and on. And that sounds simple, but from a software perspective, making all of that fully manageable by corporate IT folks, that takes a long time. And making sure that everything agrees with all the different settings and the different parts of Windows and other applications, just to make the user experience as simple and easy as possible. Because if we're giving you the tools, we should also make them easy to find and use. So that's the single biggest thing that we announced as an overarching program across different product lines. And then the other interesting thing we announced was called the Auto Twist AI PC.
Okay. Let me stop and
Sure.
Let's discuss a little bit this concept of AI PCs and let's define it. What's an AI PC? What should it have to put it in this category of an AI PC?
Okay. So there's a technical definition that across the industry with all the different processor manufacturers and Microsoft and us and our competitors, sort of an industry-wide definition of a PC that has some degree of extra acceleration in the form of an NPU, a neural processing unit. So a different type of processing that's separate. There are some tasks that are best done by a CPU, some graphical tasks that are best done by GPU. That's pretty classic. It's been that way for many years.
Yeah.
So the AI PC introduces the third category of processing power, which is the NPU, neural, or usually called the neural processing unit. And it's simply a part of the processor that is architecturally different than a CPU or a GPU, that is specifically optimized for certain kinds of math that are very useful and very useful for AI, and for which AI-based applications can be optimized. And when I say can be, some are now, some are in process. Right? So that's the general definition of having some sort of NPU with a minimum level of TOPS, or trillions of operations per second.
Okay, so we have a definition now for an AI PC. Now the question is there a need really on the market for AI PCs? Why have you started to develop this kind of things?
So our view, as we look at what an AI PC should be, there's a number of things. It should be capable of some degree of assistance. And that can be in the form of generative AI, like a GPT type thing, or a textual or verbal GPT, or a visual GPT. It also should process that information locally. There's a lot of modern AI that is cloud-based. You type something in or you do a prompt, it goes out to a cloud instance and comes back. There are legitimate concerns sometimes about the privacy of that, and as AI-based processing and functions become more common, we would say, and I think everyone would say, that any AI implementation needs to be balanced looking through a lens of privacy and security. So the ability to run AI-based processes locally on the computer, we think can be of a great advantage. So there's a privacy concern there, and there's a general concept, we use the term, industry term, PKB, personal knowledge base, of keeping that private information local on your computer. So those are sort of the definitions of what the capabilities of an AI PC should be. So our terminology for it is to break the general functions of AI PCs into three categories. Personalized, the ability to do things local in a way that keeps your data more private. Productive, because at the end of the day, if it's just for show or just for fun, well, it's not really the business we're in. And protected. Personal, productive, protected. So we should be able to do some aspects of those three things with the data. And then there are subcategories of different types of work. Does it assist you in doing something you are already doing? Does it help create something that you might not have been able to do on your own? Or is it in some way transformative of the data? And we don't mean like a transformer and it changes shape. That would be cool. But is it helping to, and is it turning data into insight? Right? Is it using data analysis or predictive capabilities, or is it doing some kind of security scan? Is it transforming raw data into something else? So there's really kind of multiple axes of looking at it, and it is complex. But essentially we're talking about a new type of optimized processing architecture that can do things better, faster, and or more efficiently than an older architecture. That's the simplest answer I can give you.
At this point in time, with the knowledge that you have, what do you expect? Every PC is going to be an AI PC, or we are going to have various categories, simpler, let's say, classical PCs with no AI chips, or how do you see things evolving?
When I look at just the last 2 years of really the modern AI PC era, there are certainly implementations, chips, systems, laptops, desktops, which don't have it yet. And I would certainly never say that everything will have that specific architecture immediately. But given the cycles on which people and companies buy PCs, 2 to 3 to 4 years, I would say that in the next 2 to 3 years, almost every computing device will have some degree of computing power that is specifically optimized for AI-related tasks.
Looking at the market and discussing with partners, with retailers, with customers, business partners, what kind of feedback do you have on these AI devices and in general on the products? On what kind of things are now on the agenda? I'm curious if things have changed, let's say, if compared with, let's say, 5 years ago before the pandemic, and what kind of things are customers asking for or are paying attention to?
Sure. I think the most immediate thing that our customers are noticing, because it is very visual, are things like the collaboration effects that I spoke about before. There have been ways to replace backgrounds in video conferences, to blur backgrounds, to auto-center the camera, to clean up an image that's a little noisy because of low light. But they were generally very intensive computationally for classic CPU or GPU architectures, which meant you could do them, but the productivity, time, and computing power that was available in your PC, maybe you had this experience, I certainly did at the beginning of the pandemic,
But no one was doing all day long this kind of meetings.
Right.
It was another world.
Exactly.
5 years ago.
But then when the pandemic hit and we're all working from home and we're trying to blur the background because I forgot to clean up the the mess behind me, honestly, it would make even a high-end ThinkPad that I had 4 years ago slow to a crawl. Right? I could get my video effects, but I tried to launch a PowerPoint or do some editing or something and just really slow. And this was a pretty high-end ThinkPad at the time. So to answer your question, I think that's the most noticeable thing. There are many other interesting things, but with the last year and this year's newer, higher powered NPU architectures, the fact that if my computer has this much power and I'm using this much, then adding all these video effects could really make my work experience much worse. But now that we have systems that are doing all of those effects and enhancements and things, maybe it used to take that much of my CPU and GPU, and now that's being offloaded to the NPU. So my total load and the amount of productivity, time, power that I have is much, the experience is much better. So I think that's one of the immediate things that they're noticing. The other thing would be, trying to think what is the most common thing I'm asking. Those effects are one of the things, and not everything is there on the NPU optimization yet. What customers I think are looking forward to is in modern cyber security, PC security, running a full suite of products that can scan, detect, protect against all the different vectors of threats, malware, viruses, ransomware, network intrusion. That can be really heavy, as they say. And in the classic model of running a virus scan every so often and just chewing up the resources of the computer, that's one of the more anticipated things, is the ability to have NPU or AI PC optimized software on the security side. And I think we just announced a partnership with a company called SentinelOne to do this, to put all that more in the background. But when I say in the background, I don't mean it's less important. I mean, it can run behind everything in a way that isn't affecting the overall performance of the PC. Beyond that, at the very highest end, the like workstation PCs and workstation ThinkPads, the ability to run local models. So I don't know if you've tried, I'm sure you've tried ChatGPT and some of the other models.
Oh.
Well, the thing about that, as we all know from a corporate or even personal perspective, like I said, put everything through the lens of privacy and security. Many of those types of applications, you're sending all of the information that you're asking out to a cloud, which is then being used to train future models. And of course, there are enterprise or company versions of various products that will keep all of your data private. But on our higher end workstation PCs, the ones from NVIDIA in particular, they have a product called Chat RTX that I've been playing with quite a bit, that uses the full power of the GPU and NPU, if it's there on the system, to take locally indexed data and make it searchable by voice. So just a couple of different examples there of the local power of doing it, so you don't have to send it to the cloud and you can keep it completely private, how it can improve overall efficiency and productivity day to day by offloading stuff that you need but don't want to have to deal with, and video chat effects. And there are loads of other things that we know are coming or in the early days, but I think those are three of the most visible right now.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I think it's an ongoing discussion about this
Yeah.
whole AI stuff, and I think companies, people are starting to understand and looking around and still testing a lot, because we see also when talking to various companies in the market, various degrees of understanding of what's happening and what AI means and what's a large language model and how do you talk with it, how reliable is it, and so on. So you are a storyteller for Lenovo. So which are the main stories that you are telling, or maybe what you enjoy the most to talk about?
So one of the stories that I told this morning to some customers that we had here is that one of my favorite things to talk about is just sort of the history of the way our philosophy and history of ThinkPads. Because I've been working for Lenovo and IBM for 27 years, and ThinkPad itself is only 32 years old. So by the time I started, it was only 5 years old. And I did not start directly in ThinkPad, but soon after I started, I began working with those teams in Japan. And by way of background, I spent 2 years working in Japan after I graduated from university. My minor study, as we call it in the US, was the Japanese language for 4 years. And then I lived there for another 3 years on assignment with IBM. So I've worked with the teams that have been developing the ThinkPad for over 25 years. And I always learn something new every time I go there. And it is completely compatible. The story I was telling this morning is why I believe, and I do believe it to be true, that our philosophy meshes really well with the new era of AI PCs. There's a lot of marketing around AI. But the practical reality is that it's a shift in the way that we allocate computing resources, the way that we allocate power within a PC, the way that we use power, the way that not the way the battery supplies power, but more efficiency in using the battery. And then we have to think about cooling. We have to think about, there are AI things you can do to save power in the display. And the way that we've approached ThinkPad for 32 years is that every engineer is taught from day one that there are three things that every ThinkPad has to have. The right balance of design and usability and all of those factors, balanced with innovation, technology. If it doesn't have something new, why do you want to buy it, right? It's got to be something new every year. But underneath that, the fundamental quality and the reliability of the product. If it looks great and it has the latest and greatest technology, but it's not reliable, then that's not a great experience.
And it's not a ThinkPad. I put that because
exactly
everyone knows that ThinkPads are the kind of computers that are really reliable and you can use them for years.
And that is not an accident. It is a fundamental philosophy of the way that we teach the engineers. And it was all started by, or really brought to the full organization by the gentleman who was the lead engineer on the very first ThinkPad back in 1992. Japanese engineer and senior executive named Naito-san. And I've asked him, I've done some internal interviews and some videos where I asked him, I said, what do you think is the most important thing that you've ever done in your 30 plus years of working with ThinkPad? And I thought the answer would be this technological problem that we solved. But no, he said he thinks the most important thing he ever did was teach multiple generations of engineers to seek the right balance between the engineering and the durability and reliability and the design, but always when they're making a decision, think about good engineering, think about cost, but at the end of the day, look through all of that and figure out what the effect is going to be on the customer. Is it going to be a benefit to the customer, or is it to the end user from productivity, or is it going to be negative? And if it's going to be negative, we need to do it a different way.
Okay.
So that's one of my favorite ways to sort of explain what AI PC means to us. It's very technologically interesting. I think it has more open possibilities than just about any broad concept around computing in my experience. But fundamentally, it's about engineering the right product, both from a hardware and software perspective, to make it usable and productive. Because if we just cram a whole lot of things in there that have the AI label on them, and it doesn't actually help people, then that's not what we're trying to do here. So that's one of my favorite stories to tell. And then, the new PC that we announced, the new concept that we showed at IFA, the auto twist. If you've seen the concept, you probably had the same thought that 99% of people had.
Yes.
Are we so lazy now that we need to use our voice to open the laptop? So it has a motorized hinge that twists around, and we say, okay, twist, open laptop, and it opens. But of course, that's not what it's about. It's about an exploration of a product that we don't necessarily have to make. In fact, there's no stated plan to make it. We may or may not make anything like that. But by doing these concepts like that and the transparent laptop, just gives us a chance to explore the most important thing. The engineering is the means to the end, but that end and the most important thing is how do you make the PC more natural to use and more productive by the end user. So it's really a study about what are the possibilities of having a PC mechanically, physically interact with the user in a way that is very seamless, very natural, and very automatic. And I think having the screen and the camera follow you as you walk around the room or automatically adjust its angle, there's definitely applications for productivity there. Some degree of better ergonomic use, possible applications to people with different abilities who just can't physically open it. It will close the lid automatically when you leave. Some degree of privacy and security there.
Anyway, you have to dream to innovate, so...
Exactly. We mostly have to be practical, but sometimes we get the luxury of not being practical. And
Anyway,
that's the most fun.
It's like in the car industry.
Yeah.
You have concept cars which are never produced in mass market, but you get some pieces from those products and put in mass market. So I think there is no problem that we can dream about and look at this kind of innovations. So as we approach the end of our discussion, let's discuss a little bit about the future. How do you see it? What should we expect? How do you see it through the lens of a big PC producer, one of the greatest in the market? So what should we expect?
Sure. Like I said, we have concepts for rollable screen PCs, transparent PCs, auto-moving PCs. Maybe we'll see some degree of those technologies coming to the mainstream. I think there are components of all of that are interesting. But as a broader class, PCs that are more able to react to, so there's the physical part, screen scrolling up and down, moving around. But really, at the end of the day, a PC, I'm going to make a sort of crazy analogy here. A PC should not be like a steam locomotive. It should not require an engineer to be constantly like turning knobs and feeding coal or logs into the fire just to keep it running. The ultimate ideal, if you finish a full day of highly productive work and put this in your bag, and the whole day you didn't even have to think about anything, and it just worked exactly like you thought it should, that would be perfection for us. AI PC and all the other things nothing is ever going to get us 100% there. But I do think that the ability to anticipate and react in a way that is personal, but also secure, right? The PC may need to know your schedule, which it already does in some ways. It can change the screen. These are just concepts, but change the screen, move the screen, dim the screen. We already have the ability on this one. If I look away, it will dim to save battery power. And as soon as I turn back, like, it's almost so fast that I don't even notice that the screen is dimmed. And that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. So the ultimate promise of AI is but one big part of the promise is to make things more natural and automatic and just anticipate them. Some of that we already have, some of that we're working on, and some of that we don't even know what it's going to look like yet in the future. But ideally, it should just work for you. And it's an interesting intersection of hardware engineering, software engineering, and people and the users to figure out how that needs to happen and what that should look like and what do we need to invent in order to make that happen.
Well, I'm looking forward to see what kind of products Lenovo is going to launch, and hopefully we get to meet again earlier than 5 years from now.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for the discussion today. Now I think I'm going to ask for storytellers whenever I'm going to set up an interview at other companies. You set the bar high, so thank you so much for today.
Well, thank you. I think the worst thing that I could ever be is boring, and I desperately don't want to be boring, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Vă mulțumim și dumneavoastră pentru că ne-ați urmărit. Aceasta a fost ediția de astăzi a ZF Tech Day. La revedere!